They called him a visionary, a savior of the future. But behind the promises of peace, he was building a prison, one lie at a time. In a world desperate for hope, the people chose illusion over truth, and by the time they realized the cost, freedom was already gone. This is The Illusion of Tomorrow, a story of power, deception, and the downfall of a nation that forgot how to question its leaders.
Thank you for joining me for Storytime with Tanya for part 2 of The Illusion of Tomorrow, part 2 called The Shattering of Freedom. Vale wasted no time. Within weeks of his inauguration, he unveiled the New Dawn Act. His fingers caressing the gold-embossed leather portfolio as cameras flashed. 300 pages of legislation wrapped in patriotic blue covers and tied with silver ribbons. Its preamble written in flowing calligraphy that promised a harmonious society where every citizen sleeps without fear, works without want, and lives without division. Crowds gathered around public screens in every district square, their faces upturned and illuminated by the glow of Vale's calculated smile, as he described a future so tantalizingly perfect it seemed criminal to question it. But buried deep within its clauses were shackles. Independent media dissolved into the one broadcast network. Biometric citizen IDs tied to compliance scores. Emergency powers with no expiration date. Elias read the bill with a growing dread, his fingers trembling slightly against the crisp government paper. The kitchen's fluorescent light cast harsh shadows across the dense paragraphs of legalese, each clause seeming to tighten like a noose. "This is the end," he whispered to Clara, pushing the thick stack across their worn oak kitchen table where coffee rings stained its surface from happier mornings. She frowned, her brow furrowing into 3 distinct lines, but her eyes lacked the horror he expected. Her fingers traced the embossed seal on the cover page. "It doesn't look that bad. And maybe if it makes things safer?" "It's never just safety," Elias snapped, his professor's voice cutting through the quiet hum of their refrigerator. "It's control." But no one listened. The New Dawn Act passed with a 93% approval rating, the numbers flashing across every screen in the city like a digital pulse of surrender. That night, New Aethel erupted in celebration once more. Crimson and gold fireworks burst against the ink-black sky, their reflections trembling in the glass facades of skyscrapers. Citizens danced in streets slick with spilled champagne, their faces flushed and gleaming with sweat under the harsh glow of surveillance lights. And Vale, hidden in the shadows of his Capitol spire, a needle of obsidian glass piercing the clouds, watched through bulletproof windows, the corner of his thin lip curling upward. His victory was absolute. The first to vanish were the journalists. Mira Chen from the Independent Tribune disappeared 3 days after publishing an analysis of the Act's surveillance provisions. Her apartment was found immaculate, bed made, coffee still warm in its mug. Critics of the regime vanished in the night, branded traitors and conspirators on morning broadcasts that played in endless loops. Families received cream-colored envelopes with official seals and condolences, but never bodies to bury. Next came the teachers. Elias's colleagues thinned like autumn leaves from a dying tree. Professor Whitman, who had taught political theory for 30 years, resigned abruptly. His office emptied overnight. Dr. Laszlo was accused of sedition after a student recorded his lecture on historical parallels to authoritarian regimes. One morning, Elias stood before his university office door, key hovering uselessly before the gleaming new brass lock that had appeared overnight like a metallic tumor. His reflection warped in the polished surface, gray streaked hair, hollowed cheeks, eyes wide with the realization that had been building for weeks. A custodian shuffled past with his gaze deliberately on the freshly waxed linoleum. A week later, a cream-colored envelope with the university's embossed seal arrived, containing a single sheet of paper with the word terminated, appeared in cold serif font, surrounded by bureaucratic platitudes. That night, Clara's fingers trembled against his sleeve in their dimly lit kitchen, her whisper carrying the scent of mint tea. Please, just keep your head down. If you stop speaking out, we'll be safe. But Elias felt the weight of his dog-eared history texts stacked on their shelves. Pages marked with yellow notes where patterns emerged across centuries, and new silence was its own form of death. Years blurred into a smear of identical days. New Aethel transformed beneath steel and glass, its once vibrant neighborhoods now uniform in their sterility. Quadcopter drones with glossy black camera eyes hovered at every intersection, their rotors emitting a mosquito-like whine as they scanned faces for compliance scores that flashed on citizens' wristbands. The gray marble library, where Elias had once lost himself among paper and leather, was gutted, its arched windows now illuminating rows of identical gray tablets, each loaded with text where paragraphs would silently change overnight. In school classrooms, children recited new history lessons that traced Vale's lineage to founding fathers. His portrait, stern yet benevolent, watched over them from frames rimmed with gold leaf. At markets, people clutched ration cards with trembling fingers. The weekly allotment of protein cubes and vitamin paste shrinking while nightly broadcasts showed computer-generated footage of foreign saboteurs poisoning croplands. Citizens wore their hunger like badges of honor, pinning government-issued sacrifice for strength medallions to their threadbare coats. And still, Vale's approval rating climbed into 97%. The number projected onto the Capitol spire every evening at sunset, glowing red against the darkening sky. Elias hosted secret gatherings in his basement, where a single bulb dangled from exposed wire, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. 7 folding chairs arranged in a tight circle, voices never rising above a whisper as he passed dog-eared books with blacked-out government seals. But the fear was constant. A metallic taste on the tongue, a prickle at the nape of the neck. Every creak from the floorboards above made hearts stutter. Every meeting felt like a coin toss of fate. Clara, once hopeful, grew quiet, withdrawn. The dimple in her left cheek that appeared when she laughed hadn't been seen in months. She no longer spoke of politics, busying her trembling hands with mending clothes that weren't torn. She no longer smiled when Elias whispered warnings. Her eyes fixed instead on the dust motes floating in the thin shafts of the evening light. She focused only on surviving. One evening, as drones hummed past their window, their red scanning beams slicing through the gap in their threadbare curtains, she whispered the words that cut Elias deeper than any state decree. Maybe you were right, but it doesn't matter now. It's too late now. Thank you for joining me for Storytime with Tanya for part 2 of The Illusion of Tomorrow, called The Shattering of Freedom. Stay tuned next week for the next episode, which will be the finale.